大家好，这里是询经问政，我是张询，我在美国芝加哥。我们油管的主频道还是要再继续备封，一直到2周以后。我们现在呢是在我们的油管第二频道和油管的有台有频道自由美利坚小夏的这个频道以及我们在兰博的频道上面进行直播或者是播放视频。大家请尽快的去订阅我们的油管第二频道，加入我们的电报讨论群都是询经问道的。同时，最根本的解决办法呢，还是要订阅兰博，那里边有我们的全部视频这样才能避免油管对言论自由的打压。好，那今天回到正题，大家知道中期选举呢，现在目前民共两党的这个初选已经基本结束了，还有一个小部分就是下周二，我们还会给大家提前来讲。现在离11月8号最终的决战呢，已经不到9周了那此次选举的意义，我们重复了多次，我们也不用再重复了。现在挽救美国刻不容缓而挽救美国呢是个过程，中期选举是这个过程中重要的一部分。我们要积极的参与，这是我们一直在强调的。我们询经问政呢，我们会在现在到11月8日之间，我们详细的介绍最终对决的一些主要共和党候选人，分析选举形势，另外也给大家提供这个捐款信息，因为大家知道现在你把捐款捐给共和党委员会，大家都不是很信任，他们很多把这个钱拿来给 Rhino 花，对不对？好，那今天呢，我们就来做我们计划中的一部分。我们今天要推荐一个极其特殊的一个候选人，因为呢，他是共和党候选人，他却被共和党全国委员会所抛弃，不给他1分钱选举经费，全靠他自己筹款。而这个人呢，他是加利福尼亚的，他在加利福尼亚这么一个深蓝州，在自己的一个深蓝选区。而且选举的时候，大家知道加利福尼亚初选是不分共和党、民主党，大家都混在一起。最后前2名出现在11月8号再次对决。他不仅在跟共和党的初选，而且在整个与民主党这样一个混合式的初选的情况下，他居然出现了。虽然还落后第1位，但是他作为第2名出现了。所以呢，这个人我认为值得支持的。但你为什么要支持他呢？他的选区有多重要？他获胜的可能性有多大？这样吧，我请大家来看我的采访视频，自己来得到这个答案吧。Joining me, Mr. Mike Cargile, Republican candidate of the 35th Congressional District of California. Hi, Mike. Welcome to Easy Media.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. First, congratulations for winning the primary of your district and advancing to the general election in November. I did a little bit study in your district. I understand you are still trailing your opponent, the Democratic incumbent, Norma Torres, right? I understand it's an uphill battle for you. So why did you decide to join the fight for the U.S. House Representative?
Well, years ago, I was a young Army officer, and I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help me God. And as a warrior, I saw this as my time to rejoin the battle, but not on the front lines carrying a rifle, but this time in the political sphere. So I have used my skill set. I'm a filmmaker, a Christian filmmaker. So I brought that into this race, and it's been quite one of the greatest adventures of my life, getting into politics and combating people who are trying to destroy my country.
That's great. I see in your constituency, almost 70% of the population is Hispanic. And your rival, she is a Latina born in Guatemala. In fact, you are, I think, the minority candidate in your district. So what's your strategy to defeat your opponent and win the election? How do you connect with those Hispanic communities and voters?
Well, see, this is one of the greatest secrets that's about to become an open secret. The Latino population, a lot like the Asian population, is inherently conservative.
Yes.
They have conservative values when it comes to their family and their religion. They're hardworking. They want to reap the benefits of that work. They want opportunity and education and in the workplace. There is no difference in the white, the black, the Hispanic, the Asian when it comes to values. So I took my whole campaign, removed political parties. I have to put it on the ballot because you have to be registered with one of the two main ones. But I am actually running as an independent Republican. And I centered the whole campaign on values. I am pro-God, pro-family, pro-life, pro-jobs, pro-police, and in all other areas, America first. We must take care of our own before we reach out around the world and try and help other people. So with those values in place, I'm able to have a conversation across party lines, across cultural lines, because these are the things that unite us. So I'm here to defend people's right to worship any way they want, in the way that they want. And I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And as a Christian, it's really important for people to understand this, that our founders created these wonderful documents, our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, with one thing in mind, that we were all created, which means you have to have a creator in place to be created, but we were all created equal, which means in front of God, we're all the same. So if you remove God, then we don't have these rights that are spelled out in our foundational documents. You don't have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And you're not all created equal because there's no creator. And so for us to fully realize the magnitude of what's been put in place, you must have people like me in office who respect the biblical values that are above us, because that's an objective standard by which we've enjoyed prosperity for hundreds of years now, because we recognize things like, what does God say murder is? And then we say, well, that's bad. We can all agree what murder is. But if you remove the Bible and you remove this standard, you'll see what happens, because here in California, there's a bill, and it just got passed in the California Senate, which says if a baby is born alive, you still have 28 days to consider whether you want to kill it or not.
Wow.
That's not an abortion, because the child has already been born. That is murder. That is infanticide. But that is what occurs when you remove the standard that we've all agreed on for the last 200 plus years. And this is a very dangerous place. I am pro-God. I am pro-family. What does that mean? That means I stand for the biblical definition of marriage, because marriage is first and foremost a religious institution. You can have civil unions and you can have contracts, but the institution of marriage was biblical in its conception and its origin. So I stand for that. I stand for the nuclear family, which is mom and dad, and they're married and they have kids. And hopefully they make enough money where mom can work or not work, but dad provides enough for them to have a house and a car. And they're in pursuit of this thing we call the American dream. And so this dream is under attack, both at the workplace, but in school now. We're teaching with CRT that your skin color is somehow going to determine your future in life. That is the antithesis of what Martin Luther King wanted. He wanted our character to dominate, our hard work, not our skin color. That's the least important feature of you as a person. And then the even greater assault is this transgender sexual assault of our children. My old pastor said this, and I'll never, ever forget it. He said, if you know what a doctor knows, you would be a doctor. And if you know what a lawyer knows, you would be a lawyer. When a child knows what an adult knows. They're no longer a child.
Exactly.
Destroyed their childhood. You've ripped all of these childhood things out of their head, and you've put adult concepts that their emotions and their psychology are not equipped to handle. And you've destroyed this little person. And now they're taking it even further. And they're saying, because we've introduced these sexual concepts into these little children, we're going to let the children decide for themselves whether they want to be a boy or whether they want to be a girl. And we're going to surgically alter them in the direction they choose for themselves. We're going to remove the parents from this equation. You're no longer responsible for your children. We're the state. Now, everyone who knows what the CCP and your radar should have gone up. When the state tells you how the children will be raised, they're no longer your children. They belong to the state. So I protect the family. I protect our ability to worship as we want. And I protect life. And this is really critical, because life, from the beginning to the end, and we saw this with COVID, when you have no respect for life, we were killing our senior citizens in nursing homes. We had no regard for their life. They died sad. They died alone without their family. It was a horrific tragedy. And now we go to the beginning of your life. And I tell people when they say, oh, I'm pro-choice, I'm pro-choice. I say, all right, well, let's talk about this objectively. When you die and you're in the operating room, they're going to measure one thing at the time of your death, and that's your heartbeat. At this point in time, you had your last beat, and now we are officially saying you're dead. That's an objective measure of the end of your life. Why don't we use that same measurement for the beginning of your life? The very first heartbeat tells us you're alive and you're a person. And for me as a legislator, then you fall under all the constitutional protections of the United States. I will protect your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of happiness and your ownership of property and all of these wonderful things that we protect the citizens of the United States with. And then I want to protect the jobs. I want kids that go to college to not be strapped with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. What Joe Biden's doing now with the debt forgiveness is wrong. But what's also wrong is the extortion that the students have been under by these major universities for decades because of the loan guarantees by the federal government. The federal government needs to get out of the education business completely. If there are student loans, they should come from the universities themselves. And that way we put the responsibility back on the schools. Are you going to offer worthless degrees to people who can't pay you back? No, they're going to offer degrees that will provide meaningful employment later so that you can pay the school back the loan. But there's a large segment of people who are not bound for college. They do not function well in an academic environment. We have one of those, a friend of our family's. He was terrible in school, got bad grades, acted out all over. But after school, he went to a welding class, and he's the most gifted welder. And now he's welding the nose cones for Elon Musk's SpaceX program.
Wow. Yeah, I guess America needs welders probably more than graduates, degree receivers.
We need welders. We need electricians. We need plumbers. We need masons. We need all of these skills. And we act like those are lower level. No. So in support of that, I want to get vocational education back into our schools, starting at middle school. You know, you're in middle school, these kids have skills. They're good with their hands, but more importantly, they need to experiment. Do I like this? Do I not? Do I like working on cars? Do I not like, and we've robbed the multiple generations of that opportunity to find out what you like and what your true talent may lie in. And so I really want to push that. And I'm not an anti-union guy. California is a union state.
Yes.
That's a state issue. That's not a federal issue.
Right.
So if a state wants to be union, then I'm okay with unions. If they want to be right to work, then I'm okay with right to work. It's a
Yes.
state issue. It shouldn't be federalized. And because California is a pro-union state, okay, let's work on a living wage, but let's work on, we have these unions and they have wonderful apprentice programs. And I want to teach these skills to the graduates of these vocational training. I want them to get into and have, collective bargaining protections. This is all common sense to me, and I don't know why people fight against it. But the last thing is police. All of that goes away if you're operating in a lawless environment. So we must have police. They must be well trained. They must be well funded. And the biggest issue with the police is the same problem with the teachers union. The union has become so powerful that if you have a bad officer, it's almost impossible to fire that officer.
Right.
So that's really the Achilles heel of the police department. And I would like to work with the unions, and somehow we can build a better program where if you got a bad officer, it's easy to let him go, and we'll get you another good officer because we've got a robust training program behind that. And I have a whole line of thinking on this because I also want to offer higher education to people who enroll in police academies and so on, so that they're not looking at it, as a whole career, but having some time in law enforcement, just like going in the military, having some time in the military. I was an Army officer. It gives you a completely new understanding of your country, and you respect it, and you enjoy the patriotic feeling you felt protecting it and defending it. And that's where I get into the America first. It doesn't mean that I feel like we should dominate the world. I just feel like we should take care of this country because this country takes care of us.
Yes.
We have veteran suicide off the charts. That breaks my heart. And we have homelessness like we've never seen in California. And unfortunately, people don't understand because of the weather here. It attracts homelessness because they're not dying like in Chicago and DC because of the weather. But now they've created a business out of homelessness. And California is enjoying billions and billions of federal dollars, which is all of the other states were siphoning their tax dollars into California. But this business we call homelessness. So in a nutshell, that's maybe more than you were asking for.
Well, I'm so happy to learn more about what I was asking you for. But while you're talking about all these things like faith, abortion issues, law and order, vocational schools, all the things, I feel that the Hispanic voters, they should really, really like where you stand. But traditionally, they have been voting for Democrats for most of the time. So how do you think your those points you just mentioned can help you win the hearts and mind of those Hispanic voters?
Well, I don't think it's about winning their hearts and minds. It's buying the advertising that simply allows me to express it. And then they agree with it. And that's really, if you distill politics down, because I was in show business, it's brand ID, it's brand awareness, just like you would do with Nike or any other brand. You buy advertising to expose the brand, and the more you're exposed to it, the more familiar you are and you have a better feeling about it. So when you as a voter get your ballot, all it's going to say is Mike Cargile, independent businessman, Republican. And somehow I have to create an emotional response in you to this very objective statement. And that's what advertising does. It allows me to speak in a number of places, and I will create, when you hear Mike Cargile, smile, it's Cargile. You're going to do just that. You're going to have an emotional response to a simple name. And there's two names on the ballot. And that emotional response for probably 90% of the voters will dictate which circle they fill in.
That's great. Mike, I like your values, your perspectives, your faith. To me, I feel that you are just telling me what you need. And also you are a Christian filmmaker. You understand the best way to communicate. So, and I'm glad what we can help is because our YouTube receives viewerships from all over the United States, also across the world. I think the least I can do is to put your address, mailing address, underneath the video and advocate them to send checks to you to support. We will personally make contribution to your campaign too.
Well, I appreciate that more than I can express.
Sure.
But let me say this. I believe, the most important congressional race in the nation right now for a multitude of reasons. Some of them we don't want to get into because of censorship.
Yeah.
But I will be able to win this race with no help from the Republican Party. I am kind of at war with the Republican leadership right now because of my stand as a Christian against this transgender agenda with the children.
That's right. Yes.
And so I am the only candidate in the United States who has been unendorsed, meaning they removed my endorsement because I'm too conservative. What makes this race really unique is my opponent. We haven't talked about Norma Torres.
Yes, tell us something about her.
Well, most people have no idea who you're talking about. She's not one of the squad, and she's not one of the celebrities on the Democratic Party.
Right.
But she is Nancy Pelosi's secret weapon to Central America.
Wow.
Norma Torres is Guatemalan. I believe her family fought for the communists in Guatemala years ago. And she has been an open borders advocate or proponent or supporter for years and years, meaning she has been the one holding the border open so that the human trafficking can occur. So what's happened now is the gangs and the cartels are making more money now bringing people across the border than they are drugs. And what's happening in Guatemala, and has for years, is you would have the gangs, they would send a woman to your house because men are more intimidating. They would send a woman and they would say, if you will let me have your children, I can get them a good education and a job in the United States. If you'll let me take them north, because, their society is decimated by civil war and all. Yeah. So they give them their children. They're raped, they're molested all the way up to the border. And then they're given out, and they relax under Joe Biden, they relax the standards for acquiring one of these children. And so we don't know where the children went. The cartels know exactly where the children went, but they've been sexually abused. And then someone shows up and says, you're going to come with me now. I'm your uncle, right? And if you say no, they go, I know where your family lives and you're coming with me. And so the children and the women are put into sex trade, or they're put into forced labor. And please do not doubt me on this. I believe there are more slaves now operating in the United States than there were before the Civil War. Wow. Just people have a blind eye to it because they're not picking cotton. They're actually on the street corner, or it's that little kid working in a poultry factory or a marijuana place in the Los Angeles forest. But this is happening, and it's happening on an enormous scale. And my opponent, Norma Torres, is the one holding the border open for this to occur. And I can prove that because last year, the Biden administration wanted to offer reparations to people who had been separated at the border from their children during the Trump administration. Do you remember this? They wanted to offer up to $500,000 a person for reparations.
400,000 something.
Exactly. Almost $500,000.
Yeah.
But what you're not told is most of the people that were trafficked during that time period were from Guatemala, where my opponent has been operating for years. And so what would happen is they would say, oh, we're providing reparations. It would never go to the person. It would go to the gang that brought that person here. So the United States was going to fund the cartels, MS-13, all these gangs, using our money, and we were going to go through the people, right? And we were going to continue to fund these activities. And it's even worse, because you may know the name George Soros.
I do.
Yep. So George Soros is a Hungarian Nazi, and his goal in life is to destroy the United States.
Yes.
All of these bad district attorneys. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But if you look at Baltimore, if you look at Los Angeles, all these bad district attorneys were all put into office by George Soros's money.
Yes. Yes.
He is working to destroy Central America.
Yes.
With the help of my opponent, Norma Torres.
That's right.
He is helping him divert one of the biggest allies we have in Central America is El Salvador. And they have a new president. He is a great man, and he's really fighting hard against the gangs. And Norma, with George Soros, is trying to undermine him by taking U.S. aid, which should be going to his administration, and it's going to these communist nonprofits. And they're fighting against this democratically elected leader. And this makes her probably one of the most dangerous congressional leaders in Congress. And so my race is not just a congressional race. This is an international race.
Yes.
Which has a global consequence because of what's occurring at our central border with our neighbors to the south. And people ask me about immigration, and I say, listen, Trump's wall is great. It's a great idea. But in reality, if we really wanted to have the best security measure we could ever have at our southern border, it would be to help Mexico and Central America become safe and prosperous. And then nobody wants to leave their home. If they're providing for their family, they're not, storming the gates to get into the United States. And that would make this the safest place and the safest time we've ever had if we would actually, as the Bible says, treat each other the way you want to be treated, or love your neighbor as yourself. That should be our attitude towards our neighbors to the south.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I also noticed there is like about 10% population in your constituency are Asians. A lot of them are Chinese, of course. So how well do you understand them and their needs? And what would you do for them if you get elected?
Well, the wonderful news there is it's more than 10%.
Oh,
according to the new census data of the census that was conducted last year, my district is 60% Latino, 18% white, and 16% Asian.
Wow.
So it's grown. And that's primarily because there's a couple key areas in Eastvale and Ontario where the Asian community is really growing. My wife is half Taiwanese.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I love the Asian community. I love the Asian culture. And what I respect most, because my kids were swimmers, and probably 90% of our swim team were Asians, primarily Chinese.
Wow.
And they had their moms, we call them tiger moms.
Yes. That's right.
We call them tiger moms.
Yes.
And they would never, they didn't tolerate anything less than the hard work it would take to become successful in the United States. You're in the books, and if you're not in the books, you're swimming, and if you're out of the water, you're back in the books. And I absolutely respect that. And I want to provide. And then we had this thing, it was called Prop 16, which was based on this critical race theory idea of, well, we can't have too many Asians in our universities because, they're so great at math and sciences. We have to allow people of other skin colors. And that's wrong. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. We have to reward the hard work. And when the tiger moms and their kids are putting in that hard work, how do you take that away from them? simply because they're Asian or they're white or they're not what we're looking for, because we're only allowing certain skin colors to progress through these universities. So that's how I'm going to protect. I want to do away with all of that. And I want it to be a meritocracy where you advance based on the hard work and the achievement of the pursuit of excellence is really what we want, whether it's in math, science, or welding. So for the Asian community, I think the greatest thing I could provide is a framework of objective opportunity, where if you put in the hard work, you will reap the rewards and you will reap the benefit and you'll get that job or that occupation you want. That's probably the greatest thing I could do for any, not just the Asian community, but the Hispanic community and everybody else. We're looking for equality of opportunity, not necessarily equality of outcome, because some people are going to work harder and some are not.
Right. Yeah, and the law and order, I think, is also huge for Asian communities.
Yes, and when there's no law and there's no order, then we've seen a lot of crime or the targeting of Asians specifically in New York and San Francisco.
Exactly.
And it's horrific.
Yeah.
And I get very mad because my kids look Asian too, and I would want to just kill someone if they were to walk up and just punch my son or my daughter in the face just because of the way they look.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, I also want to talk with you a little bit about a more general issue, about America. Traditionally, Americans, be it Democrats or Republicans, we all embraced a set of values and stand against another set of values. For example, we stand for God against atheism. We stand for freedom against a dictatorship, for capitalism against socialism and communism. We have disagreements and arguments. Those are signs of democracy, right? But both parties absolutely support what I call it American culture or melting pot. I regard this melting pot, within the melting pot is one set of values. There are variations, some kind of, minor differences. But now what I see is the melting pot has become a salad war, or even, worse, especially in blue states like California. So are you worried about this general trend in your mind? What do you think we all should do to turn it around?
Well, what you're describing is something that has been very, very concerning for a while, because it used to be both political parties. They would battle back and forth about how we're going to get somewhere.
Yeah.
But they both had the same vision in their mind of where we wanted to wind up.
Right.
We wanted to wind up at this place where you had the American dream and you could afford a house and go to get a good education.
Yeah.
So however we got there, that was what we were arguing about, but we all wanted to wind up at the same place.
We agree with one destination. The argument is about how to get there.
There you go.
Now
exactly.
we are seeing like different people have different destinations.
That's the problem. Because they don't have the same picture in their mind of where they want to wind up. And it's predominantly because of the influence of communism in the educational system. So if you take communism and you distill it to its essence, it really is nothing more than a small group of people controlling a very large group of people using fear and dependency. We saw the fear with COVID and all of this stuff with COVID. People became afraid. They allowed their businesses to be shut down. And out of that, they became dependent on the government. And the more dependent the government breeds, the greater chances we will enter in this communism phase, which is really just another name for slavery.
Yes.
Because when you've been freed or liberated from all of your freedoms, you're now a slave. And the
Yes.
state will tell you what you wear, what you can eat, where you can go, how you're going to get there.
Who to marry?
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's where, again, it comes back to the whole human trafficking, all this stuff. The people now, the Democratic leadership, and I don't say this about all Democrats because they don't feel all this the same, but the Democratic leadership is okay with slavery as long as they get to be the new masters.
Yeah, that's right. Also, can you comment a little bit about last night's Joe Biden's hateful speech in like a bloody background? I was shocked.
Well, I was not actually, because I know what we're dealing with, and I know who we're actually up against. And this is why it's so important to get people like me in office, because I see through, I pray for wisdom and I see through what's actually going on. And this fight is not about Democrat or Republican. It's not about America versus China or Russia. What we are actually under is an assault against humanity by a small group of people. You saw them at the World Economic Forum. You saw them at Davos. They're the people that are on the Jeffrey Epstein files that they won't allow us to see, or the Ghislaine Maxwell client list that they will never release. And these people are open Satanists. They literally worship Lucifer. And as such, they see you and I, people that are made in God's image, as their enemy.
Yes.
And they are at war with humanity right now. And victory for them is eradicating the entire population except for enough to be their new slaves. And they've used a virus. They're using a vaccine. This Green New Deal has one purpose, and that's to collapse economies, so that people will starve and will be without basic necessities.
Will be dependent on them.
Yes, but even then, they want them dead. They want them dead. You cannot survive if you don't have water and food and shelter. And if I can't turn the power on in California, then you may die of heat stroke. And in Europe, if you can't turn the heat on, you may freeze to death.
Yes.
And the greatest thing they could do is get us in some wars. So if we can get in a war in the European theater with Ukraine, and then if we could get into a war with China over Taiwan, then the body count goes up exponentially. Exactly. And that for them is a victory. So we need leadership who sees what's really going on. And I would be on the phone with President Xi Jinping saying, stop. We have to stop. We're being manipulated. The same thing with President Putin.
Yeah.
I would say, stop. We have to understand what's really going on. And my eyes were open to this. When I looked at the world economies and I look back on the Trump years, China was never more prosperous than when the world saw the United States as prosperous. When our economy's booming, so was China, and so was Russia. It all is tied together. So when the United States is big and flourishing, so is everybody else. So why would you want to collapse the United States, which is what the Green New Deal is?
Yes.
Because you want to take down the world. That for them, now you have to see our true opponent. And it is an evil, evil, dark opponent. And only the church in the United States and the church around the world is the only institution that can stand against this. And the church has never been weaker than it is right now. And that's why you see the evil prevailing everywhere. And it's going to have to take the church, the pastors, godly men and women standing up for truth.
They're talking about fight by our Christians, by churches. I've always seen this war is a spiritual war. And the left, they are not actually atheists. They are very religious. They are religious about their own religion. And they are launching a spiritual war. And that's how you see from the hateful speech of Biden. Also, you see even from the design of the background, the backdrop, even though that's where the United States Constitution was drafted. So, do you agree?
Yes, anybody with eyes to see and ears to hear could hear the evil that came from him, and the backdrop was colored and framed in such a way that it was either sort of a Nazi satanic like, even though it was flanked on both sides by blue, but the blue was behind it. And it can't be a political color because the color of the Democrats is blue.
Right.
So why would you paint the immediate background behind Joe Biden red? And why would you put troops right behind him? It was very eerily similar to Adolf Hitler and what he would do as he framed himself.
Exactly. Talking about the future, and I'm looking beyond 2022 midterm election. Then it is 2024 general election. Do you support President Trump's bid for 2024 general election, and why?
Sure, I would support him as the front runner. There was nothing wrong with the Trump agenda. The only issue people had was his mean tweets, and he was abrasive in his speech. But the results of everything his actions legislatively and internationally, we were never safer and we were never more prosperous. So for me, absolutely. Now, I disagreed with some of his tweets, and I hope going forward he has better advisors around him, because I don't think he realized at the outset how much how proud they are of their president. And every word, every nuance is a reflection of all of the millions and millions of Americans, whether that they voted for you, but you're their representative. And so you want someone to be a statesman, you want them to be cordial, you want them to treat others the way they would want to be treated, stay out of the petty name calling, be above it all. Now, when someone lies about you, you confront a lie with the truth, but there's confronting it, and then there's going to war. And I think people got tired of the battle. But at the same time, we've never had a media that was more geared against him. He was under constant assault by all of the media. So I can sit here and armchair quarterback this all day long, but I do know that there were a few key times where I would say to my kids, pay no attention, even though, he shouldn't have said that, but he's still a good guy and we're doing the right things. And if the worst thing you could ever say about him is he had a couple mean tweets, why wouldn't you support him?
Right. So talking about supporting him, do you think there is, this part, I'm going to cut it out from my YouTube. Yeah, I think this is in general is making those many blue states, especially California, just a one-party ruling dictatorship. It's just like, and they can really do something. Even I think CCP would feel inferior to them. For example, they can announce one day is that we are no longer selling gasoline cars starting from what's that, 2035?
2035.
Yeah, and then the next day it said stop charging your electric cars because we don't have enough power. So this is I sometimes say if you call this a third world management, you are really humiliating third world management.
Unless you see it for what it really is, and that is it's not about cars, it's not about electricity. They want to kill people.
Wow.
Because if you can't get in your car and you need emergency services, what are you going to do?
Right.
If you need food and you can't get to the grocery store, what are you going to do? So
Exactly.
they're collapsing transportation systems
Yeah.
and this war on crude oil. And people don't understand crude oil. Only, I think, about 13% of crude oil is actually used for fuel.
Yes.
The rest is used for rubber and
Yeah.
synthetics.
Yeah.
All of these things that
Plastics,
make our
yeah.
life happen, plastics,
Mhm.
is all from crude oil. And
Right.
if you stop drilling and refining crude oil, you're collapsing the world into
Yes.
less than a third world state.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, way to go. Wow. So American patriots, Republicans, Christians, yeah, we all need to unite and start fight with no time.
We got 5 weeks for me because in
Yes.
California, the election doesn't begin in November. It starts October 10th. That's the day every person who's ever lived in California will get a ballot. And that's when the election starts. And for the next month, people will be mailing in, dropping off ballots. I have 5 weeks to get people to understand what's at stake and to vote for me, get me in office, so then I can really start to fight against this dark, dark evil that's plaguing the world.
Yeah, well, great. I learned a lot from our conversations, and we'll try to help in whatever way possible. Mike, do you have anything to say also to our audience?
Yes, California is the key. It
Mhm.
really is. Think about California. I think it's the greatest state in the nation.
Mhm.
From it, we have gotten computers, and
Yes.
Silicon Valley,
Right.
the food of the United
Right.
States. 90% of the food comes from California's Central Valley because our weather, the
Yes.
soil is so amazing here. Anything grows. And we also have entertainment, Hollywood and
Yes.
music and culture.
Right.
California is amazing, and its impact on the world is
Right.
amazing, but
Yeah.
it's also the originator of so much evil.
Right.
All of this stuff we're talking about, a lot of it also originated in California. And politically, the evil we all suffer under right now is all coming from California. Think about it. Where's Nancy Pelosi from? California. Where's Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader, from? California. Who's
Right.
the tie-breaking vote in the Senate and the vice president of the United States?
California.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
California.
Right.
It's all California.
Yeah.
And I'm the most important race in California because
Yes.
I'm fighting both parties, getting
Right.
zero support from any of them, but
Mhm.
it's the values, the morals that will be embraced not only by the Latino culture, but the Asian culture. And when I win, it will be a small earthquake that will begin to break California apart. And California is the head of the snake. And if we can fix that, we cut the head off,
Yeah.
we save the nation.
Amen.
And if we save the United States, then
Save
the
the
world
world.
doesn't go dark. So in a way, that's what you're really asking. How do we fix it? You're looking at him.
Wow, that's so powerful, Mike. Well, I'm so impressed with what you all said. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for your time and your thought and idea. I want to once again congratulate you on winning the primary, and all the best wishes for the general election in November. May God bless you, bless your family, and God bless California and America.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. 麦克很谦卑，他是个敬虔的基督徒，而且他专门做带有基督教信仰为基础的这样传递这样价值观的这个影片制作。所以呢，他真的是我很令我佩服的人。因为还有一个，他从事这个传媒和影片制作呀，所以他非常了解沟通和说服之道。他是很强的沟通能力和说服能力，而且他的选区像他讲的如此重要啊。 那么也是一个我们要考虑的因素。另外呢，加州他能够在他的选区深蓝选区作为前2名，不分党派他能出现，说明呢他的初选胜利不仅是在共和党内部的胜利，也是包括在包括民主党在内整个选区的胜利，这也就证明他的实力。而且大家不要忘了哈，这个35选区让他讲的，60%是西裔拉美裔的，16%的亚裔，只有18%是白人全美白人他的比例是占到60%到70%所以说呢，这是一个什么？我管它叫潜力股为什么潜力股？现在你看看我们现在看的这些价值观，西裔的这种拉美裔，他们需要工作，他们也很勤劳。那亚裔更不用讲，他们对社会治安的要求等等等等的，所以他们在未来我们会看到，不仅这次中期选举，未来的几十年之内，我相信都是亚裔和西裔大翻红、大反转的时代。他们未来我看上去呢，他们变成共和党的可能性要比黑人社区变成共和党的可能性，黑人社区选民变成共和党的可能性要高得多。所以呢，无论是从今天这次中期选举，还是未来的长期来看，这个趋势以及麦克本人的素质和能力，我觉得他都应该值得支持。目前他唯一需要的是资金，因为他懂传媒，他知道怎么去沟通，他也了解选民的心理。你只要给他资金，他能够做广告，他又会制作广告，所以他就会恰当的使用，他就会事半功倍的使用他的钱。那么我们全美的华人最能做的，我觉得除了支持他，来说服自己的亲戚朋友在他的选区内给他投票以外，最能做的就是捐款给他由于共和党全国委员会给他断供，所以他设置了独立的网站和独立的捐款账号。所以你看其他的候选人，我建议大家直接要寄手写的支票给他们，因为呢，他们的这个网上支付都被这个共和党全国委员会卡一刀截留了。但是 Mike Cargile 他的这个捐款网站不会被截留，所以大家呢直接捐款就方便很多。当然了，如果你希望寄支票给他，你请看我们视频下方的邮寄地址和联系电话。请大家多多的支持 Mike Cargile。今年我们国会翻红，不仅要在数量上，更要在质量上。我们希望支持更多的爱主的真正的右派，像 Mike Cargile 这样的基督徒和 MAGA 的候选人进入国会。最后我还要强调，我们今年的口号是防左反共除 Rhino， 求真靠主争自由。感谢大家收看，这里是寻经问政，我是张群，我在美国芝加哥，我们下次再见。